Do you want to learn effective ways to build relationships, generate sales, and grow your business from successful entrepreneurs, startups, and CEOs without listening to a long interview? If so, you've come to the right place. Gresham Harkless values your time and is ready to share with you precisely the information you're in search of. This is the IAM081 podcast.
Hello. This is Gresham Harkless from IAM081 podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Michelle Eichner of Digitile. Michelle, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Hey, thank you, Gresham. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Awesome. And what I want to do is just read a little bit more about Michelle so you can learn a little bit more about her and hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. Michelle is the founder and CEO of Digitile. She works with businesses to reduce the challenges employees have finding files. Eichner is a seasoned marketer and SaaS software veteran with a deep understanding of the marketplace. Her more than 25 years of in-depth B2B experience driving product marketing and strategy helps identify market challenges, gaps, and solutions. Michelle, are you ready to speak to the IAM081 community?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's do it. So first question I have was just to hear a little bit more about your CEO story and what led you to kind of start your business.
Sure. So probably like many other CEOs, I had a pain point. So I was the head of marketing at a startup in New York. I had about 10 people on my team, and we created content for the internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. What I found is we would store things in Google Drive. We'd have some things in Dropbox. We had files living in Salesforce. We had files living in HubSpot, all sorts of different places. And inevitably, someone would Slack me or someone on my team or email us and say, hey, where's the latest data sheet? Where's the latest client presentation? And we would have to stop. We'd be disrupted, and we'd have to help, them get to the link of the file. And I figured at some point there's got to be a method to the madness to help people find files faster. And ultimately, I didn't find a lot out there, and I set out to build something that could conveniently help you search across cloud platforms for your file, irrespective of where it resided, in order to just quickly have a very sophisticated search engine that goes and finds what you need.
Awesome. That's a genius idea. And as always, as any entrepreneur says, there has to be a better way, and you found that better way. So I wanted to drill a little bit deeper and hear a little bit more like how your service works, how exactly it works, what platforms it might work with Digitile.
Sure. It's very simple. It actually takes about 30 seconds to set up your account with Digitile. We do have a free trial. Once you do that, we then ask you to connect or sync your Google Drive, your Dropbox, your Slack account, your Gmail. Those are things you authorize. Once you do that, and then it's a two-way authentication through the APIs of these other companies. And from there, we never take possessions of the file. We merely can search across these different platforms to then find the file you need. So if you're looking for the latest case study that you might have done for your clients and you type in something specific, we check not just the title of the file, but we also have natural language processing that will go through and identify any of the text related to your search. We have image recognition. So if you have an image in there and we've got image recognition to be able to identify files that have relevant images. So we built a sophisticated engine that just goes across these different platforms and simply finds the files for you.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, where exactly is it? What's the latest file? And how exactly do I find access to it? But to be able to kind of sign into a platform that allows you to synchronize all those different software and services is pretty incredible.
Great. Yeah, it is. So far, we've had great response to the service.
Awesome. And now I wanted to ask you for what I call your secret sauce. And this is kind of what differentiates you or makes you unique or your organization unique. So could you give us an example of your secret sauce?
Yeah. So from a company perspective, so each of these platforms have different behaviors and different elements that when you go search a file in Dropbox, there are some nuances with that make actually finding a file hard. Their search engine's actually not very robust. They don't actually check within the context of that file, whereas Google does, or Salesforce does not, HubSpot does not. So some of these guys do something different and unique. And then also, so how you search, how you share files is unique by platform, and you have to log into all these platforms. We wanted to unify this experience so that even though each of these had their own nuances, you didn't have to worry about those. You could do it however, the one way and have a consistent experience across these. So a good example is sharing. When you want to share a file, let's say you've got a new employee starting and you've got 10 different documents that you want to give that new employee. Some live in Google Drive, some might live in Slack because you happen to Slack to a channel. And you don't want to log into each of these platforms separately to go, here's the 2 files that are here, here's the 3 files. So what we did is we made sharing possible across platform. So you just literally say, here's the files, 10 files I want to share, and I want to make the experience very simple so that you're not logging in all these locations. We'll go through the process of pulling from each of these locations, but you have to just go through this process once. So we unified your experience across all these different platforms. And that's part of the secret sauce. The other secret sauce is the search engine that makes finding files fast. It's seamless to you, but there's a big heavy lifting algorithm on the back end that's doing all these processes to give you the file that is the most relevant to what you're looking for.
That makes perfect sense. And I think that's pretty awesome just because it's kind of like you're able to tap into the secret sauces of all these different platforms. And then you're able to make your own kind of secret recipe or secret sauce based off of that because you understand the strengths and weaknesses for all these different platforms. So I think that's a great idea and a great company that you're building. So I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you for what I call a CEO hack. And the CEO hack could be an app like yourself, or it could be a book or something that you use or lean on a regular everyday basis that makes you effective and efficient as a business owner.
So I've got a couple different things that we use app-wise that we find helpful at Digitile for us. Not a lot of people know about a project management tool called Notion. And I think of Notion as a mashup of Trello, Asana, Slack, Evernote. I could probably go on, even maybe a Gmail and a sorts. And it's like the perfect tool that offers the most flexibility for you to manage your just everyday life at work, even at home if you wanted, but nonetheless, and manage all the projects and all the tasks and have communications going back and forth. And it truly is a mashup of about 10 different products in one. And so its flexibility just really helps the team come together, focus, and just understand exactly who's doing what, where things are in stages, and lets us easily communicate with one another as far as what do we need to do or what the pass off is or what have you. So from a product or an application, I would say that's been a good hack. I wouldn't call that a hack. It's just a good, valuable app. As far as hacks, interestingly enough, I think one of the hacks that I've come to appreciate is, so we're a business-to-business company. We sell to other businesses, and we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator quite a bit. And LinkedIn has a tool called LinkedIn Helper. And LinkedIn Helper allows you to take essentially a download of all the profile information so you can start to really build a targeted list. And then from there, there's other hacks that allow you to essentially communicate and email with these people, not through InMail. And so there's lots of little hacks that have helped us kind of communicate, target, and hone in on our potential customer audience.
I love those 2 hacks, and especially obviously LinkedIn. And I haven't heard of the other one. What was it called one more time?
The app or the LinkedIn
app.
Helper? Oh, so the app is called Notion.
Notion. Yeah, I actually have not heard of that. So I would love to check that out. But again, being able to kind of pull from the greatness of Evernote and all these other platforms and be able to kind of mash it up, like you said, into one is definitely a great CEO hack that we can definitely check out. So now I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. This might be a word of wisdom or piece of advice or something you might tell your younger business self.
Yeah. So when you become a CEO, I think it's important this is not news, right? You need to be able to network. And depending on where you are in your career, you've built up probably a fairly large network of people that you've worked with and met over the years. And what I'm finding is if you've done a good job of building those relationships over time, networking when it counts and when you really need to call upon people, whether it's just for advice, to brainstorm, to ask for opinions, to ask for, do you want to participate in a beta program? Would you consider being a client? Whatever that ask is a lot easier when you've had relationships or you've cemented relationships in a way that allows you to pick up the phone 5 years later, frankly, even 10 years later, and not skip a beat and not feel awkward about making that call. Because it's tough sometimes to start calling on people you haven't spoken to in a long time. And so I think probably one of the most important things for me was just recognizing, I did it just naturally a good job of kind of keeping in touch and cementing relationships where I felt comfortable. But then there's cases where I didn't. And then there was like, okay, how do I break that ice and try to not make this such an awkward approach when I wanted to ask that individual, for advice or get their thoughts with respect to market trends or frankly, join our beta. And so I think there's, we tend to, you get ideas, you think that sales will just come, but there's a lot of hard work in building the business and networking that I think entrepreneurs probably underestimate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it obviously helps out a ton if you have relationships that you've already built to be able to pull on. Like you said, sometimes you might even have a relationship and it might not be in the same sphere as what you're asking about or what you're doing. So still there's some type of kind of, I guess, awkwardness or something, or it's a little bit different. So you have to be able to kind of navigate that. And there's a lot of other things you have to juggle as a CEO. So definitely, networking is a big part of that. So now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is kind of the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're having different CEOs on this podcast, but I wanted to ask you specifically, what does being a CEO mean to you?
So to me, it's wearing a lot of hats and being flexible to play the different roles, especially when you're small and you don't have a big set of resources to rely on. I think it's also around being able to make good educational decisions. I think everybody's going to make mistakes. If you made the mistake based on foundational information that helped you make the decision, it is what it is. But, I think it's kind of you've got to be prepared to play every hat and recognize you may have strengths and certainly weaknesses. You need to understand those strengths, certainly play on those strengths. Where you have weaknesses, don't be afraid to outsource, don't be afraid to delegate. And at the same time, recognize, kind of how far you can take some of these weaknesses to overcome some of them too. So there's things that we early on may have outsourced that over time we realized we actually had skills that we could do if we just put a little time and effort into it. And now we do some of these things we used to outsource. Conversely, there's probably things now that we recognize we don't want to spend and waste our time on. There is an expert that can get us from point A to point B a lot quicker. And even though we're trying to be mindful of dollars, we sort of have to go, is that dollar worth, is it worth my time at this point in where we are in the business, versus spending a few bucks that we may not have considered. All these things just, play into the CEO being flexible, making decisions, and honestly being really in tune with your business.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And definitely understanding like where you are in your business, like you said, the dollars versus the time. If it makes sense, when does it make sense? Does it make sense, later years down the line, or does it make sense today? So trying to figure out and put all those puzzle pieces together is always a fun thing about being a CEO. So I love that definition, Michelle, and I appreciate you for taking some time out. What I wanted to do was pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there was anything additional you want to let our readers and our listeners know and how best people can get a hold of you.
Sure. So things that I think everyone should be aware of is find mentors, right? I think I've personally have been able to reach out to people when I've had questions and not appreciated perhaps having been through something before, either anticipate what something might look like or be like when you get there. There's times when you're in the thick of stuff and you need someone that you can contact. And, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take on some assistance and, free or otherwise. It can help clarify. I think sometimes we tend to eat our own dog food so much that we forget to look beyond our four walls. And having an outside perspective, in my opinion, has been very helpful. And from time to time, actually, I do have a really good plug for CEOs out there, depending on where they are in their business, which is early on, I discovered the Small Business Development Center, which is an arm of the SBA, and there's no cost to businesses, and they are consultants, and you get an advisor who essentially you can go in and talk to. From there, if you have questions about legal, if you have questions about accounting, if you have questions about marketing, they bring experts in to speak with you. It has been a great resource. I meet with them at least probably quarterly, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what our needs are. So I want to share that because I think it's a service that a lot of entrepreneurs aren't familiar with, the Small Business Development Center, an arm of the SBA, that they can have a team of experts and advisors that they can access at no cost. You just have to sign up and get going. So that's probably my biggest leave behind as far as for those entrepreneurs out there who are either early on or just kind of getting going and want to find some mentors. But I think getting mentors is a very important, recognize it. I think it's an important component of helping you grow and seeing past your four walls.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. And especially the SBDC as well, too. There's local SBDCs all across the United States. And now I wanted to see if somebody wants to reach out to you and they want to, take advantage of that trial, what's the best way for them to do that as well?
Sure. So our website is Digitile, digitile.io. So it's digitile.io. We have a free trial on that site. If anyone wants to contact me, they can either just do it right through the form online. They can LinkedIn with me. I'm happy to chat and kind of chat with people who are interested in entrepreneurship or want to bounce ideas. We're in the SaaS business. So if you have questions about starting a SaaS business, by all means, feel free to reach out even through LinkedIn. And I'm happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, I truly appreciate you, Michelle, for taking some time out and all the great advice and the great things that you're doing, you and your team. So I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the I Am CEO podcast powered by Blue 16 Media. Tune in next time and visit us at IAM081.co. IAM081 is not just a phrase, it's a community. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. Grab CEO gear at www.ceogear.co. This has been the I Am CEO podcast with Gresham Harkless. Thank you for listening.